So I'm going to go ahead and pull all the chips off the boards. I've decided to do that. So we've got the chips we pulled in the previous video, a few DRAMs I've pulled out. Let's go ahead and get the floppy controller out of the socket. Hopefully it'll come nice and easy, and it did. I do have actually some WD-1771s in my stock as well. Pins on this look absolutely fine. We'll set it aside. I guess we just start working our way down here. I've got a retro IC tester coming from a gentleman in Europe. It'll be a build project that looks like it would, have great application here. It can test all kinds of TTL ICs, RAMs, DRAMs. So for an application like this, that tester would be perfect, and maybe it'll get here in time for us to actually give it a shot. So let's see, we had a chip here. I'm going to try to keep these somewhat oriented. There's 3 across here to what they are on the board, so I just kind of have an idea where they go back. 3 we actually had, and I'm going to go ahead and put it over here. Just we had that oscillator there, and this guy above the oscillator, and we had 3 more coming up. Oops. This way. We can't read it. There's the pin one. And you. And I may have swapped a couple of those, but we will check. So that kind of gets that corner down there. As you can see, this isn't going to be the most perfect copy of the board, but it does give at least some hint as to what comes out where. Wow, those guys are really tight together there. Like the... Don't want to leverage too hard there. It's interesting, those 2 sockets are that close together. Of course, I'm trying not to chip any more of those ceramic caps. There was 4 there. And there's... Oh, wow, it's suddenly very humid in here. I wonder why. Let's pull this one out first so that the tool won't be going in at quite as harsh an angle. sure like seeing all those gold pins on those sockets. That gives me faith this thing will come back together and operate without me needing to strip off a bunch of sockets and replace them. I believe on that Apple I motherboard, or that Apple II, let me take it back, that Apple II, I don't have an Apple I, I have an Apple I clone. That Apple II board that we repaired, a bunch of the sockets were gone, if I remember right, as well. Just, they were single wipe, they were crappy sockets. Boy, are those pins black. Yeah, most of these DRAMs are very unhappy DRAMs. I was starting to say having that retro chip tester would be really nice, because it would allow me to test all these DRAMs and the 2114s and the logic, etc., etc. Yeah, and give us a little bit better idea if things are going to wake up and work. The troubleshooting guides don't seem to be all of that. There's not much material in what they have. Is pretty obvious, but we have all kinds of options available to us, including things like we did on the system design system, where I forced Knowles onto the bus and just kind of watched everything, you know, run as it ran through the full address space, and was kind of able to confirm the CPU group, the chip selects for the RAMs, etc. were working. And that ultimately turned out to be a solder bridge. Oh, these chips are just filthy. I'm not sure how I'm going to clean these up. It's going to take more than just like a brush or a little bit of alcohol. There's a... I don't want to say they're greasy, but they are a little bit. There's a little bit of... It's just that stuff that accumulates after things sit for decades. Dust, and I think the dust carries along little bits of oil or grease with it. It just makes it kind of sticky and... all the way to the bottom. This represents a... Once I get all 4 rows of this off, it represents a whole 64K by 8. I guess these 4116s do give a good hint as to the era this was designed in. Really before 64K DRAMs were either affordable or even available. Yeah, I need that retro chip tester to get here. It looks like it's fairly new device. We will certainly cover it on the channel here. I started out looking for just a RAM tester, you know, 4116, 4164. What's the other one? The 4464, something like that. There's a 256K one that's organized with 4 bits, I believe, of input-output. And then there's, of course, 41 256s, but I was looking for something to kind of test some of the older DRAM I've got. Well, a lot of the older DRAM I've got. And was finding things that, you know, were custom designed and made for, you know, DRAM testing, but there was just nothing that was special about them. Nothing jumped out at me as something I wanted to spend the money on. And then I found a video on YouTube of this retro chip tester. I believe the gentleman that designed it is in Germany. He seems to have excellent English and email. I've got a set of boards coming from him. Well, yeah. I think there's... I bought the main board. I bought a couple of power supply adapter boards. He doesn't provide Gerbers for any of that kind of stuff. You purchase the boards from him, but the prices were really reasonable. There's a surface mount 18 mega maybe processor that I paid the $10 to have it pre-soldered on the board and pre-programmed. So really everything I'll have to deal with is through hole. It looks like a really nice overall design. It looks like you can design or test a lot of stuff up to 32-pin dips. I don't know that for sure. I haven't looked at the example control files for it. I think we're just going to make this piece of foam all the DRAM stuff. And there's the logic that I'm sure had to do with gating, chip selects, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that for sure, but that's what that seems to be there. There is all the DRAM. We're well through over half the board. Let's go ahead and take these two chips and we'll add them to this one here. And we will make this strip kind of represent everything up here. I think I'm trying to remember the order those came out. I think they're both the same chip. 5. Looks like they're both the same chip. So we've got 4 running up along here. These are the 1488s, 1489s. So the TTL to RS-232 level shifters and receivers. I've got a huge amount of these in my personal stock. They're mostly just pulls from decades of collecting and decades of systems that were just beyond repair, doing chip reclaim on. We've got something here that will be pulled out like this was offset a little. There's more wire wrap pins there that make it impossible to get into there, but I can get in here with this guy. Can I get around that decoupling cap? Yeah, barely. Looks to me like this board is going to clean up fantastic. I keep starting to talk about that Apple II board where we had the huge amounts of lead rot, just lots and lots of oxidized pins on ICs, and then we had a lot of, I believe there was actually single wipe sockets on that board. I could be wrong, but we had sockets, as I recall, that required replacing. They were just, couldn't be cleaned up, were too dirty inside. I'm not seeing anything that looks that bad here. This was a 2114 I pulled out earlier. Date code on those is, do they have a date code? Well, it'd be better if I could read it. Made in the Philippines, 19th week of 81. Shoot, I probably just bent up leads. Actually, I didn't. That's really weird that I didn't flay leads out weird there. We've got a group of 5. You know, it's really rained a lot here the last few days in the Seattle area. It is fall. We had a nearly 2-week run of gorgeous weather. Lots of sunshine. It was really pleasant, and then kind of this rain at night stuff has kind of come back, which is common here. heavy rains where I'm at the last couple of days. Rain overnight and then little sun breaks during the day where the sun actually pops out and it gets warm, and then because everything's so wet it becomes humid, and looks to me like a pretty straightforward design. Don't see anything about it that seems odd for the era. See, I'm still impressed they're using these high quality sockets. I have read that, I think I've said this in a previous video on the board, I've read that Ferguson shipped the kits with the high quality sockets. I just didn't realize that meant gold pins, but I'm guessing now it does. That's really weird. There's a U47 printed directly on that chip. Oh, that position's U12. I wonder what it stood for, 24th week of 80. So we've got these tantalums on the power input. So the system requires +5, plus and minus 12 to operate. As you can see, there's no on-board voltage regulation. It's all regulated externally. I happen to have a +5, 5 amp, +12, 2.8, and -12, 0.5 amp, which should be plenty for powering this. It's a nice little switching unit, I think, that we'll use on here. This is from the Model 4P power supply replacement project. I bought a couple of these, and this is one of the extra ones from those builds. It'll be perfect for this, at least for powering the board up. I am at a point where I could actually apply +5 to this and see if any of the tantalums are bad. So we've got two large tantalums here. We've got a bunch of smaller tantalums as decoupling. There's 8 there. I spotted one that wasn't soldered in well up under there. I think it's because the pads... Okay, that wasn't meant to be a radial. Or it wasn't meant to be axial tantalum there. So the pins are close together like it would be on a radial. So it's just a substitution somebody did. Which is why that tantalum there seems to be in funny. Any one of these tantalums could be bad. The broken ceramic here and the one I chipped down here, either one of those could be generating a short. I'm trying to think of other stuff. I've convinced myself I'm going to go ahead and run this through the dishwasher. Other people do it and seem to get away with it as long as the board is dried well on the other side. I will take photos. We'll take some close-up photos or maybe even scan the back of the board. But I will get some close-up photos. I'm going to need them at this point. I don't expect things like silkscreen to come off. I know Adrian of Adrian's Digital Basement has ran boards through dishwashers. I think I've seen the 8-bit guy do it as well. It's something that my very nature says, no, 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 don't do that. But as dirty as this is, as difficult as these large caps are to work around, this would take a ton of work with a brush to break loose. So there's 2 sockets that aren't the same. So I do believe I have machine pin sockets, and I will replace those, I think, just to do it. Well, is there anything else we can look at here besides the chips we pulled out? Of course, the DRAMs in this orientation, the logic to drive them there, kind of this whole bottom corner of the board down here, the upper board all the way across. Yeah, these 4 here become those 4 there. So we've kind of kept positional for the logic. The PIOs, of course, there's 2 PIOs. I could swap those accidentally, and it wouldn't matter. You know, I'm not tied to keeping those in the same socket as long as they both work. So the larger chips, I just didn't feel like I needed to maintain kind of a positional orientation. Anything else worth talking about here, or do we just move on to what it looks like after it's been cleaned? I guess we move on. So anyhow, this may have been the most boring video I've ever shot. I have no clue. But we'll see you in a future video.